Hi, everyone, and welcome to the very first episode of Blue Streak Spotlight, a show dedicated to all things JCU sports. I am Logan Potosky, an undergraduate assistant for the JCU Sports Information Department and your host for Blue Streak Spotlight. In this episode, we'll be doing a season preview of the John Carroll football team. The Blue Streaks are coming off of an OAC runner-up finish last season, and they are preparing for a season unlike any other. Joining me today is fellow JCU Sports Information Department assistant and sports editor of the Carroll News, Kyle Kelly. Kyle, thank you for joining us here on Blue Streak Spotlight, and how are you doing?
Oh, Logan, thanks for having me. It's a pleasure to be on the very first episode here. So, definitely excited to kind of make my mark here on the show. And unfortunately, no John Carroll sports right now, but sooner rather than later, we'll be playing pretty soon here. So, it's time to start taking a look at some of our teams, and I'm happy to give the rundown here on the show.
Yep, and you are also the football captain for the Sports Information Department at JCU. So you seem to have a good amount of knowledge of what's expected and what we've seen over the past season in 2019. And with that, let's dive in. So firstly, taking a look at the coach for the Blue Streaks, they're led by head coach Rick Finati. He has a 24-7 career record at JCU, including a 22-5 record in conference play in the OAC. And then taking a look at how the team finished last season, they went 9-1. They were 8-1 in OAC play. They didn't make the NCAA tournament. They were denied an at-large bid, which was rather surprising, especially to the members of the team and the coaching staff. They did have some key wins over the course of last season. They won week 2 at Otterbein in a close one by a score of 14-7. They also had a 2-point victory at Marietta in week 7. And in the last week of the season, in week 10 at Baldwin Wallace, they won 17-10. And that was definitely thanks to a game-winning touchdown catch by wide receiver Keyshawn Coleman late in the fourth quarter. So, Kyle, in terms of like our coach and looking at last year's record and how they were, denied the at-large bid, what kind of motivation do you think this Blue Streak team has, especially now that they have been granted as of now, like a chance to play during this 2020, now going to be 2021 season?
Yeah, I think a lot of these guys are extremely motivated. I've been here since 2017, and that was head coach Rick Finati's first year here. So my tenure has aligned with his, and I've been fortunate to develop some relationships with a lot of the guys on the football team, and I know a lot of the guys love Rick Finati. He's a guy that came here, and obviously uh, his first year he didn't have many recruits on the team, and now the team is pretty much a team full of his guys, and they're all bought in, and they're all highly motivated. They were the last team out of the NCAA tournament last year, and coincidentally, the last team in ended up going all the way to the national championship. It was North Central. I think they even may have won it. So it just tells you how important those at-large bids are in the NCAA. And I think last season they had a lot of key wins. I think they hung around with Mount Union, who's obviously a perennial powerhouse in Division III football every year. And they pretty much hung around with them last year. If it wasn't for a muff punt early on in that game, I think that John Carroll would have, potentially been right into that one on, a couple of the final drives of the game. So, this is a team that, has, really had some difficulty coming together due to COVID. So as soon as they do, they're really going to hit the ground running.
And as you said, this really is one of the first groups on the team that's really a lot of Coach Finati's own recruits on the team. But looking at last season's team and then going into this season, there have been quite a few players who have now graduated who were definitely difference makers on last year's team. Kyle, what can you tell us about some of those guys?
Yeah, so fortunately on offense, they're only graduating Evan Nugent, the team's leading receiver. He led the team in receptions and receiving yards last year. I think he was a guy that really started to develop a rapport with Jake Floria, especially um, later on in the season. So he'll be the one main piece missing on offense. On defense, that's where there's going to be much more of a hit. The majority of the defense is graduating. Of course, All American defensive tackle Connor Bogard will be a big loss. Also, Tyler Frederick, who is an all region guy and pretty much had 4 years of starter experience. And then another guy that really came on late in his John Carroll career, and it's not any fault of his, is Cal Reynolds. He was a guy that was playing behind Adam Thompson, Jimmy Thomas, Ray Brown, some really key pieces in the John Carroll 2016 team that made the run to the Final Four. Cal transferred in from uh, Division III school in Pennsylvania, and he came here. He played under head coach Rick Finati at St. Edwards, and now he came here at John Carroll, and he was probably the best pass rusher in the OAC last year. And then of course they lose a Chad Stallnacker, a guy that was the heart and soul of the defense. He was such an important piece of this team. Coach Finati hired him as the linebackers coach. And where they're really going to be taking a hit is in the secondary. They're going to be missing Tyshawn Jones and RJ Rosario, who played like the kind of linebacker safety hybrid roles. And then at the cornerback position, they'll be losing Ariel Jimenez, their number one corner, as well as Cole Griffin, who had played a lot of time at cornerback last. So going into next year, I think that the defensive side of the ball is going to be a position where John Carroll is definitely going to need to replenish some of the talent.
So while the Blue Streaks did lose quite a few players on the defensive side, they really didn't lose much on the offensive end. So then, Kyle, we're going to kind of move on to the players that are still on the team from last year's roster who will definitely be big players to watch for the 2021 shortened season. What can you tell us about some current key players to really look out for on this Blue Streak team?
Well, much like Chad Stallnacker was the heart and soul of the defense, Michael Canganelli is the heart and soul of the offense. This is a guy that is guaranteed to get the ball at least 20 times a game, which in Division III is a pretty respectable mark. And then, his counterpunch, Devin Limerick, is a guy that has stepped in for Canganelli at times, and John Carroll really hasn't missed a beat. I know the coaching staff likes to think of those two guys as thunder and lightning. And in the backfield, you got Jake Floria. He's going to be in his second year as a starter. I don't think, certainly by Floria's expectations, it was a year that he thought he really performed well. But what people don't, really seem to remember about Floria is this is a guy that went to the University of Penn out of Mentor High School and transferred to the University of Toledo, and he pretty much didn't play any football for 2 years straight. So, he had to really get his feet wet, and I think another year under his belt, it's going to be huge for him moving forward. They're going to really tailor the offense to him. Drew Nystrom taking over for Jeff Fink at offensive coordinator. And, the wide receiver position is going to be a position that they really need to grow going into next year. I think Keyshawn Coleman will be the number one. Joey Torak, a guy out of Kirtland that came on last year, played really well early on in the season, kind of tailed off towards the end, but I think he's a piece they really like moving forward. And best thing is the entire starting offensive line is back next year, including two All OAC guys and Blake Harradine and Will McGinnis, and that's going to be a big piece for Jake because John Carroll probably is one of the better offensive lines in Division III, and to have all those guys back will be really important.
And then, yeah, so like you were saying, that chemistry on offense, that can really elevate them above the competition in their OAC conference. And so now that we've taken a look at the offensive side of the ball, how about on defense? So there are still some players coming back despite a lot of them becoming graduates and now no longer being on the team. But what can you tell us about some of the big defensive names who can be making a difference for John Carroll?
Yeah, well, I think the one that sticks out is Nate Leopold in the secondary, he's a guy that really came on well last year, another all OAC guy. Um, Nate Leopold is a guy the coaching staff absolutely loves. He's a huge part of this team. He's really going to be the anchor of the defense in the secondary. And then at the linebacker position, Brian Robinson, a senior, is going to probably step into Chad Stallnacker's shoes. And Stallnacker and Robinson got a great relationship. They both went to high school together at Lake Catholic. And, he'll be a big piece. But another guy that really came on last year when Stallnacker was hurt and Brian Robinson was hurt for a lot of last year was Hunter Orlando. He was a sophomore last year. He's going to be a junior this season. And he was a stud. He was a playmaker all over the field. Defenses couldn't contain him. But the secondary is where the big question mark is going to be on the defensive line. Believe it or not, they'll still have some pieces there. Harrison Richardson's really going to be the point on that line, and he was an all honorable mention guy, and a guy that really didn't play a whole lot of snaps his sophomore year. He was a special teamer, had a punt block, but as a junior last year, he started as an all OAC honorable mention. So on the defensive line, he's going to be the big time focal point.
So defense will definitely be the side of the ball that probably has some more questions, coming into the upcoming season, as not too many players are coming back. But now let's kind of look at maybe like some of the dark horse players who have been on the roster, but they didn't really quite get a chance to play and could possibly be making a difference this season. What can you tell us about some of the newcomers to be on the watch for?
Well, on offense, I think that could really see some action is Alec Wallace. He's a senior wide receiver. He's another guy the coaching staff absolutely loves. As a sophomore, he was really starting to get his feet wet towards the end of the year. Right before his junior season, he tore his ACL, and he'll be back to full strength. I know the coaching staff will really like to get him back in the mix, but another guy is Matthew Buser. He was a guy that when Kinganelli and Limerick were ailed at times last year, and both those guys were banged up, he really took over strong. And looking on defense, obviously that's where a lot of the missing pieces are going to be. It's going to be a lot of young guys, and I think some of the names on that side of the ball is Bricker Teal, a defensive end. He made some plays last year in limited action, and I'll always remember a conversation I had with Tyler Frederick last year when he told me this Bricker he's going to be good. He's got All-American potential, and that's never left my mind. So I really think they're going to rely on him to be the guy opposite of Harrison Richardson, and then also in the inside, Daniel Garkar, a guy that really hasn't been able to find any consistency on that defensive line, but he was a really good high school player. He'll be a big piece. And then, of course, looking towards the secondary, I think that at the cornerback position, Mike McCarthy could be a big time piece. He played some limited snaps last year. He looked good when he did, but I think that he'll really have to step up this year and play a big role with both the backs graduating.
So it definitely seems to look like that there are quite a few players to be looking out for who can be, making a big impact on the success of the Blue Streaks this upcoming season. So kind of veering away from the specific players on the team, let's now take a look at John Carroll's rankings in national polls. So this past season, and really over the past couple of seasons, John Carroll has been a big name in Division III football, being ranked in multiple polls. There aren't any rankings out for this season yet, just because, things are still getting ironed out. Will there even be championships played? We know that for the OAC, they're going to be having a conference championship game, but in terms of the NCAA tournament for all of Division III, that's kind of up in the air. But we do have the final rankings from last season. What can you tell us about where John Carroll was ranked at the end of last season?
Well, quite frankly, I think it's pretty telling because these rankings came out after the NCAA championship game, and John Carroll was ranked number 13th in the D3Football.com poll and number 10 in the coaches poll. So John Carroll was still pretty valued last year despite not making the playoffs, and I think it's pretty telling that that by all accounts, John Carroll is, a top 15 team, and I think probably could have made a little bit of a run in the playoffs last year with the team they had, and especially the momentum they had going late. And so I think that probably to start the year this year, they're going to find themselves right around that number 15 slot. Probably just because the defense is a little bit lighter than it has been in years past. But it'll be really interesting once it comes around when a lot of these Division III football schools are playing to see where the rankings shake out and what the playoff picture could potentially look like if there is one due to COVID.
And it could definitely be argued that it was very much a surprise, not just to John Carroll, but I'm guessing to a lot of other Division III schools that, you're seeing this team, they're ranked, 13th and 10th in two different polls at the end of the season, but they didn't even make the playoffs.
Yeah, it was a bummer for that team. I think that they definitely were right up there with many of the at-large bids. I mean, there were, I think, at least a handful of teams that had losing records and still made it into the postseason. So it hurt that team. It hurt them down to their core. I think it took a long time for them to get over it, and I think that they're really anxious to prove to teams that they really belong last year. And unfortunately, they'll only be able to do it with a 5-game schedule this year. But I think they're going to really make their stamp in the Ohio Athletic Conference.
So that will most definitely be a big piece of motivation for the Blue Streaks this season, and we'll have to see how it plays out on the football field. So now let's take a quick look at the schedule rundown for the current schedule as it is proposed at the moment. It could definitely be open to change if anything is to happen regarding the COVID-19 pandemic. So let's take a quick look at what the specific games are. So this season is definitely not like the traditional OAC football season. Instead of a 10-game season and having one out-of-conference opponent to begin the season, there are no out-of-conference games. All the games are being played specifically against OAC teams. And all the games are set to take place on Fridays at 7 p.m. And so, that can have that, type of Friday night lights feel that like high school games are used to having. So that I'm sure that will definitely be firing up a lot of the players on both teams in each game. So in week 1, the Blue Streaks are set to open up at home on Friday, March 12th against Baldwin Wallace. And then in week 2, they're set to travel to Alliance to take on defending OAC champion Mount Union. The very next week, on the 26th, for week 3, the Blue Streaks will be back home in University Heights against Marietta. And then in week 4, on April 2nd, the Blue Streaks will be playing at Muskingum. And then the 5th game that would be on their schedule would be on Friday, April 16th. So they would get a week break in between their 4th and 5th game. And that will be based on how the teams are seeded in the East and West divisions of the OAC Conference. So whatever seed John Carroll ends up being in the East division, they'll be facing the corresponding seed in the West division. So if John Carroll were to be the number 1 seed in the East division, they would be playing in the OAC championship game against the 1 seed in the West. So I know it's a very limited number of games, but what would you say are some of the key games to watch on that very brief schedule?
Well, anytime you hear John Carroll Mount Union, that's going to be the top game to look forward to next year, and I definitely know all those guys are. And of course, Baldwin Wallace. I mean, they're a team that's really under their new head coach have become a competitor in the OAC. And I'll tell you what, Logan, they always give John Carroll bad. In my 3 years here, it's never been a close game. Or, I mean, it's always been a close game. It's never a 2-possession game. I mean, it always goes down to the wire. So against Baldwin Wallace, that's going to be one to look out for. And then, of course, Marietta. Last year, John Carroll nearly lost in Marietta. That was a game that, I'll tell you what, the defense played outstanding. I remember talking to Joe Schaefer after that game, and he's very pleased with the defensive performance. So John Carroll, I mean, they want to make some noise in the OAC this year, and each and every year it's going to be Mount Union circled in red pen on the schedule for the team to beat.
And so the Blue Streaks, when they take on the Raiders of Mount Union, they'll be the Purple Raiders of Mount Union, they will be looking for their first win against them since 2016. So, Kyle, I do want to thank you once again for stopping by and joining me on this first episode of Blue Streak Spotlight. So, quick final thing that we'd like to go over: our predictions for the Blue Streak football team for this upcoming season. So as of now, the 2020-21 fall championships are canceled due to COVID-19, but that could be subject to change, especially now that there is a proposal for Division III football to be played in the spring. So our fingers are crossed that teams will be able to compete for a national championship. But for now, the only championship to be looking forward to at the moment is the OAC championship. So, Kyle, what do you say is your prediction in terms of the record and then what seed the Blue Streaks will be coming out of the East Division of the OAC?
Yeah, I think that John Carroll, quite frankly, highly motivated. I think they're going to beat Mount Union this year and go 5-0 and win that OAC championship. This is a senior group that I know is incredibly motivated, and I know that Rick Finati is even more motivated than those guys to win, and I think that's going to be their path this season.
So then, with that prediction in mind, if there were a national championship to be competing for, like an NCAA tournament, you would definitely be thinking that Carroll would be one of the top couple of seeds, if not maybe a 1 seed in the tournament, if that is the case.
That would not surprise me at all. I think John Carroll could be a number 1 seed, certainly a number 2, and probably no lower than 3.
So then, heading over to what I think, I'm just not quite sure if the Blue Streaks will be able to beat Mount Union. You know, it's always a tough game. So what I have in mind is I feel like the Blue Streaks for their regular season, I think they're going to go 3-1. I feel like they're going to beat Baldwin Wallace, Marietta, and Muskingum, just come up a little bit short against Mount Union. I think that'll be able to give them a 2 seed in the East. And then I feel like in the West, I think Ohio Northern is going to end up being the 2 seed in the West, Heidelberg being the 1. And I do think the Blue Streaks would beat Ohio Northern in that 2-versus-2 game in the OAC playoffs. But then I do think for this year, I think the Blue Streaks would be worthy of that at-large bid. Not that they weren't last season; they just were unfortunate to not actually get into the NCAA tournament. I think that they will be able to get an at-large bid and then be given that chance to make a run at a national championship. But ultimately, it's now just a waiting game, and we'll just have to wait and see how the action unfolds on the field. So, Kyle, we do thank you very much for stopping by and being on the show. Any final thoughts that you'd like to add?
No, man. I just know these guys are anxious to play, and I know March can't come soon enough for both them and us.
And we certainly cannot wait until the fall sports seasons and spring sports season, because all the sports will be playing at the same time. But especially looking at the football team, we certainly can't wait for all of the JCU sports seasons to come to a start. So, Kyle, thank you very much for stopping by. And that is going to do it for our very first episode of Blue Streak Spotlight. In our next show, I will be doing a preview of both the men's and women's soccer teams. So you definitely will not want to miss that one. Kyle, thank you very much for joining us here.
Yep, it was a pleasure. Thanks, Logan.
All right. Thank you all for watching, and have a great rest of your day.